All right, welcome everybody for the Building for Digital Equity event. We are thrilled to have you join us for our final Building for Digital Equity event of the year. If you are interested in learning more about serving covered populations, about digital equity plans, the role of local government and digital inclusion, and our most anticipated keynote about digital discrimination, then you are in the right place. So here's what you can expect for the next 75 minutes. First, we'll hear from Amy Huffman, the Policy Director at NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, who will give us an update on the current state of the Affordable Connectivity Plan. Afterwards, we'll have Paulo Balboa, the Senior Program Manager at NDIA, who will announce the 2023 Trailblazer winners. That's right, you're all hearing it here first. We'll then have the wonderful Rebecca Kuma, with the Director of Digital Equity with County of Los Angeles, who will share more about the role of governments and how they're essential for digital inclusion. Then we'll jump into our very popular lightning round segment that's going to focus on outreach work and how to best serve covered populations. Afterwards, we're going to be hearing from Ashley Smith, Digital Navigator with Shaping Our Appalachian Region, SOAR, and who will talk about the Digital Equity Plan for Eastern Kentucky. Then we're going to have a very informative conversation about digital discrimination and the FCC's recent ruling with Patrick Messick, the Director of Open Undivided, and Sian Tesfaye, the Senior Policy Manager at NDIA. And after that, we'll end with our keynote speaker, Patrick, again, who will talk more about digital discrimination in Oakland. So the Building for Digital Equity event, it's an educational series of live streams and events like this, and as well as a podcast to inform and debate digital inclusion efforts. Today's event is hosted by the Institute for Local Self Reliance and the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. The Building for Digital Equity is sponsored by Utopia Fiber, which is the largest open access fiber network in the nation. And I am honored again to be your MC. My name is Pamela Rosales, pronouns she, they, and I am the Training and Community Engagement Manager with NDIA. NDIA is the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and we advance digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. We advocate for broadband access, tech devices, digital skills training, and support. And today, NDIA has over 1,500 affiliates, including 27 tribal entities and organizations in all 50 states, including the District of Columbia, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. And I will be your MC today, along with Chris Mitchell. Oh, Chris, you're currently on mute.
Oh, come on. This is no way to start off a show. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self Reliance. Pamela, thank you so much for a wonderful introduction. I didn't want to step on it, so I was trying to be polite, and this is what I get. Wonderful work at NDIA. It's great to see 1,500 affiliates now. I hope that anyone who's on this call who hasn't joined will be thinking seriously about that. I use pronouns he, him, and I am the Community Broadband Networks Director. I run a program within the Institute for Local Self Reliance, and I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota. We love feedback on these episodes, and so whether that comes in the chat or emails or send me a postcard, wonderful. Would love feedback in any way. We try to take it seriously. We want to make sure that these events are working for you. Now, that is not a prop behind me. My wife told me that this was a very bad idea, but nonetheless, I drug my real Christmas tree into my office for this event. It'll be up tomorrow too for our other live stream for Connect This. So if you want to see the tree, and maybe if I get tinsel on it before then, come back. Now, I wanted to just quickly reflect on 2023. We'll be reflecting throughout this episode a bit on 2023 and maybe a little bit of hints toward what we expect in 2024. But I am ending this year feeling good. And I think we're going to talk about some real things, some things that are disappointing, that aren't working out the way we hoped that they would this year, and other things that are working out well, where we're seeing a lot of hope and organizing and things like that. So we will be talking about, I think, ups and downs. And one of the things that I'll note is that we have a whole bunch of states doing digital equity plans, and I think that's pretty exciting. My team at the Institute for Local Self Reliance, led by Deanne, is working with the state of Texas on helping to educate people about theirs. We're getting a firsthand glance into that. It's very exciting. And so there's a lot of good things to celebrate, and I hope that some of the bad news won't get you down. And we're going to end on a high note, I think. We're seeing states taking seriously rural internet access, and that is largely going to be resolved due to work being done this year and next year that will lead to grants to resolve that. We see some cities taking on really smart efforts to expand access to everyone. And of course, there's all kinds of work with 1,500 affiliates now working together on digital equity to build skills and make sure that we are getting devices out there and all of that. Now, if you are not viewing this on YouTube, if you're on one of the other platforms, and there might be a couple of hiccups here because I got some weird messages right when we started. But if you're on one of the other platforms, it might be a little harder to comment. I believe if you're on Facebook, but certainly if you're on YouTube, your comments will get to us and we will be able to see them. But you should feel free to jump over to YouTube if you want to make sure your comments are held. We are encouraging you to comment in the chat. We're going to have trivia that Pamela came up with, and that is something that we hope will lead to some discussion in the chat. You can ask questions at any point in the chat, and YouTube is probably your best bet. The next thing is the first thing, which is our first guest is Amy Huffman. Amy Huffman is the Director of Policy for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Amy is a friend who's been doing great work for many years. I remember when we first met in North Carolina, and it is exciting every time I get to see you and the great work that you're doing. So what is your update on the Affordable Connectivity Program?
Hi, Chris. It's good to see you every time I get to see you too. And it's been a long time that I've been listening to your podcast and all the great work, following all the great work you've done. So thank you for everything you've done in the field. And thank you, Pamela, for the great intro. So Chris alluded to some bad news that we're going to be discussing, and I get to be the person to deliver that bad news. And then the rest of the time is going to be about celebration, about all the great work that's happened this year. But I want to start off with just a reminder on the Affordable Connectivity Program, what it is. Remember, it's that $30 off discount for low-income households as a monthly benefit to their internet bill. So it helps people afford the internet. And in fact, 22 million households, it helps them afford the internet. And it's up to $75 on tribal land. I should say that as well. So the bad news is that the program is basically a victim of its own success. With 22 million households enrolled in the program, it's quickly running out of funding. And so, and we've known this for a while, and we've been talking to Congress, and a lot of our friends have as well, about trying to find a solution to make sure the program does not end. However, that solution has not come to fruition. And the reason why isn't for a lack of trying, but it's because there's a lack of willingness to spend money by this Congress. And so there will be actually a bill that's introduced this week by Representative Clark, and perhaps one from the Senate side as well, calling for $7 billion for the ACP through the end that would hopefully last the program to the end of next year. However, it doesn't solve the problem that has repeatedly come up when we've talked to Congress about, well, how are you going to pay for that? So it will, but anything can happen. So we're still hopeful that a solution, whether it's this bill or another solution, and perhaps a long-term solution, will come forward before the program depletes funding. At this point, the funding may be depleted by the end of April 2024. So we still have a little bit of time. And we have been, and we will continue to be working hard to to get the program renewed. And in the interim, we're also going to be working with our affiliates to beginning to support folks across the country transition to another solution, identifying what those solutions might be and that sort of thing. So again, it is not great news, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of it. However, there's still hope, and we will keep fighting, and encourage you all to do so as well. But you'll need to determine how to spend your resources in your precious time.
Thank you, Amy. And I appreciate, I think it's hard to get up here. I know that you've put in a lot of work. A lot of people have put in a lot of work. One of the things that I can say, and having done this work for 16 years at this point, is that it is rare that we get what we want without some trials and tribulations. And so have no doubt that this work may bear fruit later. And so for people, as Amy says, we don't know that we will get a renewal in time to have an uninterrupted ACP. The work that is put into organizing, though, to make sure that low-income families can be well connected, it will ultimately be rewarded. More and more people will recognize the importance of this. And I fundamentally believe that we will get it done, but it may not be pretty for some of the years in between.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
Thank you so much, Amy. I know that's difficult to talk about, but I also believe that directness is also respect, and it allows for people to start planning ahead. And I know that we're going to have resources that we'll be putting out at NDIA through our listserv and through our community calls, and also a working group of some sort. So not all hope is lost. This just is another pivot, another opportunity for us to adapt and serve, which is what our community does best, right? And so thank you so much, Amy.
And if I could just interrupt you for a second, Pamela, there is a question about a plan B. And I think the strong plan B has long been a path for Universal Service Fund, which is called USF for short, taking over. There was already a program called Lifeline that many of you are familiar with. And the idea would be to improve that to be more like ACP. And a lot of people have worked on that and will continue to work on that. And I believe that would be our plan B. But yes, Pamela, we can't answer any other questions right now, I'm afraid, but we'll jump on to the next item of the agenda.
Yes. So we want to focus on reflecting on this year and highlighting all the work that you've done. And one of the milestones of the year that I want to reflect on is all of the actions that you all took during Digital Inclusion Week, which made this year's Digital Inclusion Week the biggest. And so we had 687 people, as well as 503 organizations who took action throughout the week. So we saw states participate in new ways, like sharing their state digital equity plan during the week. We saw Arizona and Kansas release proclamations declaring Digital Inclusion Week throughout the state. And we also saw the first proclamation from the Northern Mariana Islands. So shout out to Northern Mariana Islands. We also saw a record of media coverage that helped highlight the need for digital inclusion. And of course, the 100 of events that you all put out there to help folks get signed up for ACP, get devices, learn skills, and hold conferences. So continuing that spirit of recognition, we want to start off the next segment with our very first trivia question. All right. So this one is a different type of trivia because there isn't an A, B, C, D, but we want you to look at these different cities and think about, what do these cities have in common? Austin, Texas, Boston, Massachusetts, San Francisco, California, Portland, Oregon, and San Antonio. And you could put your answers in the chat, or you can just ponder about, what are the similarities that these cities have? And we're going to share the answer after our speaker. But first off, I want to pass it over to Paulo. He is the senior program manager at NDIA, who's going to talk more about the Trailblazers and share a very exciting announcement.
Thanks, Pamela. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks to Pamela and Chris for hosting this amazing event, and I'm thrilled to be here. I do have a slideshow, so cue me doing the awkward thing when I take a second to pull this up, but here we go. So I am here to talk about Digital Inclusion Trailblazers. For folks who don't know, Trailblazers is a program that NDIA has been running and leading for the past 7 years. It's an annual program in which we highlight the efforts of local governments meaning towns, cities, counties, regional councils of governments, we highlight the work that they are doing to advance digital equity for all of the residents that they serve. Beginning in 2016, we've been highlighting local governments and also posting the annual list of trailblazers to our website and awarding them at our annual Net Inclusion Conference. Last year, we awarded 32 trailblazers, which was the most ever, and we were super, super excited about that. But we took a look at that number and we said, the digital inclusion field is growing really, really fast. There's a lot of new models like digital navigators. There's a lot of new practices like asset mapping. Coalitions have started to emerge. So we took a look internally this year to figure out how can we revise this program to make sure that that Trailblazers reflects the growing trends in the field, but also that it is inclusive of new models and new types of services in the digital inclusion world. So this past year, and also as Pamela mentioned, you guys are on this call are getting a sneak preview for Trailblazers. We're actually making this announcement officially through our channels tomorrow morning. So you are in privileged company to be a part of this as we announce that this year there are 47 Trailblazers. That's 47 local governments who are paving the way for digital equity and presenting new and innovative models for digital equity for the residents of their communities. I just like this graphic because it really shows like the huge jump in the amount of Trailblazer communities that we're honoring this year. And again, that reflects the growth, the rapid growth of digital inclusion in our field in this past year. So everyone is here to learn, who are these 47 Trailblazers? Just imagine that there is a drum roll audio, or maybe you can do this on your own end. But the 47 Trailblazers that we are honoring this year are these cities. Too many cities for me to name in this limited time. I just want to point out that one of the things that we included this year for Trailblazers is a new tier called Visionary Trailblazers. And these are cities that scored the highest in our grading system as evidenced here. We wanted to make sure that the Trailblazer program, again, could be inclusive of cities of all different sizes and types and funding models, and especially for folks who are new to digital inclusion. But I just wanted to stop there. I know that we're short on time, but I wanted to stop there and really just congratulate everyone who is on this list. Again, we'll be making this announcement on our blog, in a blog post and our listserv tomorrow. You'll get to see the full list. You'll get to see also, more importantly, all of the resources that each of these communities submitted. So we think of Trailblazers as a place not only to highlight good digital inclusion work locally, but also as a resource database for other folks who may want to learn about how they can implement digital inclusion locally. So if you're looking for stuff like job descriptions, digital equity plans, program materials, all of that and more will be made free and open tomorrow morning. So look out for an announcement from us bright and early.
I just want to note that I think with the inclusion of Hennepin County, that means 1 in 4 Minnesotans live in a Trailblazer community. And I defy anyone to find a state that has a higher proportion of people in Trailblazer communities. So California might come close.
You'll find out tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paulo. And congrats again to the 47 Trailblazer winners. We're so happy that our Building for Digital Equity participants are able to get that exclusive, juicy info. And to show you just how critical local government is to digital inclusion, you're going to hear from a Trailblazer winner. Please join me in welcoming Rebecca Coma, the Director of Digital Equity at the County of Los Angeles.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm just so excited to be here with you all, and hopefully you can all see my screen. And I just want to start off with the energy and the vibe that I'm going to be channeling for digital equity and inclusion for next year. And this is the photo that I'm going to be sharing right now. And I just want to mention, I don't know if you guys remember this, but after former First Lady Michelle Obama officially finished her term with former President Obama, there was a time where she came out with the most beautiful, absolutely stunning gold dress and also gold high heels to match. And these were not just any type of high heels. These were super high heel boots. And that just gave me an entire vibe and energy. And that's the channel and energy that I want to be able to uplift with you guys all today. And pretty much say that I am going through a gold season when I'm looking at 2024. And I know gold oftentimes gets a really bad rap when we're talking about your energy and what you want to be able to channel, but I'm going to channel all things positivity when we're looking at gold. And it's pretty much how I would like to embody the role of local government. So when we're looking at gold, we're looking at accomplishment, confidence, optimism, passion, success. Gold oftentimes enlightens, it's generous, and influences and inspires, it uplifts. And that is how I see the role of local government when we're talking about digital equity and exactly how I plan to start off 2024. For those of you guys who don't know, I used to work for the city of Long Beach, and then I recently got a promotion here with the county. So it's a lot of getting caught up to speed, and I want to make sure I'm fully equipped to be able to support other local governments. And that is how I'm channeling Gold Season. I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in practice and how local government continues to shape digital equity and inclusion. First and most importantly, we must continue to eliminate systemic racism and oppression in our own government. We understand that government has played a significant role in perpetuating racial hierarchies, and also in addition to that, the different levels of racism that we're seeing as well. So as we're doing that, we must co-create systems and structures that work for everyone, and that includes communities most in need. As part of our efforts, we must continue to channel both racial equity as an outcome and as a process. So what key steps are we taking to be intentional, inclusive, and ensuring that we're ultimately uplifting communities that are most impacted and most in need in the digital divide? We must take a racial equity lens in all aspects of the work that we're doing as it pertains to digital inclusion. So as we're getting ready to pursue funding opportunities, whether it's directly from your state or from your federal government, how are you as a local government leader applying a racial equity lens in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of the work that you're trying to do? In addition to that, understanding that our communities play an important role in the work that we're doing, we must break away from the way government has taught us with how we engage with community, and most importantly, dismantle any type of inequitable power dynamics and focus on transformative relationships. So how are we ensuring that our community members have voice, power, ownership, and their lived experiences are included as part of our decision-making processes? In addition to that, I've learned so much from being in community, especially by being in Long Beach. And when I think of what community embodies and what it embraces, it includes a space for healing and obviously community-friendly activities. So don't feel afraid to be able to spotlight art, food, storytelling, music, dance. I am Ugandan American. I'm also Nigerian American through marriage. And through our dance and our storytelling, that is how we're also able to define our purpose. In addition to that, it's also important that we are co-creating different types of strategies with cross-sector partners and including them as part of the ecosystem that we're trying to uplift. In addition to that, it's also important that we also continue to build community with one another. I have learned so much by being in the NDIA community. Everybody there is extremely welcoming, and it's important that we continue to stay in community with each other, regionally, statewide, and nationwide as well. And obviously, there's a lot of great best practices and models that are taking place within our entire nationwide digital equity ecosystem. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're implementing what works for you and what works for your city and your community. And last but not least, I know I said I'm channeling gold energy and having gold season, but it's important for us to practice self-care and to take time to rest. I've learned that this work can be very much exhausting. It's very rewarding, but we must take care of each other and take time to rest and relax so that way we're able to come in stronger with 2024, because there's going to be a lot that we need to accomplish as local government as we're advancing digital equity and inclusion. That is all that I have for today. I'm just so excited. Congratulations to all of our new trailblazers, existing trailblazers. You guys have done a lot of great work. You have a lot to be proud of. And we will continue to stick together as we're continuing to dismantle the digital divide nationwide. My contact information is on the screen here, and looking forward to partnering with you in the space. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I love that you highlight the role of governments, of local governments, creating a space for healing and celebration and community building. And that's exactly what we want folks to really take away from this, is that you have other organizations and partners there with you that you can use, local government to find them and connect with them and share that space. And of course, how can we ever forget Michelle Obama's yellow dress? That was iconic. Thanks for bringing that to the forefront. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And so just to give the answer of what that trivia question was, of what do those 7 or a few cities had in common, of Austin, Boston, San Francisco, Portland, and San Antonio, these are cities that have been recognized as digital inclusion practitioners for 7 years in a row. Since 2016, they have been digital inclusion trailblazers.
Georgia Savage got it. In the chat, she nailed it. I'm just assuming a pronoun, but the quick update before we do the lightning rounds for people who have come over from Facebook. It is the Heisman season for football fans, and Facebook has stiff-armed us today. We don't know what's wrong, but it is not working. So welcome to those of you who've been able to make it, but we are having a technical difficulty sharing the broadcast there. So with that, we will move right along.
Yes, awesome. So next up, we have our lightning round segments, and they, again, will be focused on covered populations. You'll be hearing from 2 different digital inclusion practitioners. First, we'll have Nubia Estrada, the ACP administrator for Chicanos por la Casa. And then after that, we'll have Eric Kim, the policy organizer manager with OCA, Asian American Pacific Advocates.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am delighted, and it's such a privilege to be here and speaking to the NDIA community. I will be presenting. I think we're good. So hi, everyone. My name is Nubia Estrada, and I am with Chicanos por la Causa. And as Pamela mentioned, I am the ACP administrator, and also really not only talking about ACP, but really digital inclusion as a whole. So we are a small but mighty team. It's not just me. I couldn't have done it with our 2 coordinators here who you see on screen. So if you get to see us in any other coalitions or in other meetings, just so you can connect a face to a name. And so we are a recipient of the ACP grant, and we are providing multi-state services. So you see here, we are providing services in California, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. And actually, I will correct myself. We have gone to Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. Our next goal is to serve California within the next few months. And we are just really excited to not only provide the services throughout the different counties in Arizona, but other states as well. Those dots that you see, those red dots there, they're just the different counties that we are servicing. So we are servicing over 20 counties overall. And we're just very, very lucky to bring ACP to a lot of those communities in need. So just a little bit about the ACP program. There you see a little funny picture there. We were at an outreach event. We started as of July 2023, really connecting with not only our agency's programs, but really reaching out to community partners, gathering data, gathering information. How are we, what are we learning as we go, right? So really process enhancement. Networking and collaborations have been a very big deal. We could not do it without our partners. And one of our strategies, and we really wanted to really, what happens once they enroll in ACP, So we have this 3-tier approach, right? So we do the outreach, we're informing, we're educating the community about this amazing benefit, doing the actual enrollments, right? Scheduling those, but also really bridging the gap between the consumer and the ISP. So bringing ISPs as sending out invitations, and whoever can come, we're more than happy to host, just so if the community can get to them, they can come to the communities. We're providing support along with ACP. We do a combination of ACP and workshops, outreach, and on-the-spot enrollment. So if they have the need and they're ready to go right then and there, we have our iPads ready to go. Scheduling follow-ups and scheduling office hours to make that time available for the community to schedule at their, whatever's more convenient for them. And one of our biggest goals is reducing that digital divide. So addressing those longstanding technological inequities in our community, providing the support to maneuver the technology at hand, and providing accessibility to affordable internet like ACP. And some of those pictures you see in the background, those are actually thank you cards from some of our clients and consumers. Just really grateful, and that's our goal. So we're taking action, and how are we doing so? So we have the ACP program, providing that affordable internet, device distribution, whether it be through donations or smaller grants that we get, we're able to purchase those and hand those out to the community. And also providing that digital literacy. So something as simple, and we have other topics, but in collaboration with Digit Unity, but internet and cybersecurity basics and mobile devices. And you could not believe, or maybe you do believe, right? We're a big, we all understand the need for our community. So our impact is, so far we've brought awareness to 2,000 people and counting, providing that financial support, right? Those discounts, that digital literacy, networking and collaborations, right? So we have New Mexico, AZ Strut, HUD, Nevada, Ciego over here in southern eastern Arizona, and then just the different types of programs that we're hitting within our own agency. So not just one specific program, but really hitting into like our senior centers, which you see that picture right there. We were able to provide that, as well as our housing programs, just to name a few. And that's just a little bit of what we're doing, just in a nutshell. There you have my contact information. If you want to get a hold of me, you want to connect, chat a little bit, I'm here. And thank you everyone for your attention, and NDIA for this amazing opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nubia. And next up, we have Eric Kim, the Policy and Organizing Manager with OCA, Asian American Pacific Advocates.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to the hosts and the attendees for listening in on this important conversation. I am battling a very difficult cold today, so I'm going to keep my cameras off, but let's go ahead and get started with my presentation about our survey. Okay, here we go. So this past year, we had an API digital access survey completed by our Broadband Access and Digital Equity Fellow, Yen Zhang. She was with us from 2022 to middle of 2023. Just an introduction, like Pamela introduced me, I'm the Policy and Organizing Manager at OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, and OCA is the second oldest ANHPI civil rights and advocacy membership organization in the country, with over 30 chapters throughout the country. The API Digital Access Survey was prepared by Yen Zhang, who has a master's, and she served again as our Broadband Access and Digital Equity Fellow from 2022 to 2023. So why we decided to do the survey is that we wanted to better understand where and how ANHPIs have internet access to identify the diverse needs and challenges that they face when it comes to connectivity. And from my personal knowledge, this is a survey that is one of its kind. I think there's not really any other digital access survey out there that has as much disaggregated data as we were able to accomplish. So how? We used an anonymous national survey that spanned 5 months with an incentive used, which was a chance to enter a raffle to win a $100 gift card. 12 languages were covered in this survey, which include English, Simplified Chinese, Tongan, Khmer, Traditional Chinese, Marshallese, Korean, Nepali, Punjabi, Urdu, Samoan, and Hindi. So who? Anyone that self-identified as part of the ANHPI community was able to participate as long as they were 18 years and older and resided in the United States. Out of the 11,200 people that were contacted, we had 8,300 respondees with access to the survey and a 73% response rate. 3,600 plus were in English and 4,600 plus were in an in-language, as mentioned in the previous slide. What? So 53.5% of respondents were well-connected, and we defined well-connected as having 2+ digital devices in addition to residential and cellular access. 76.7% of respondents have broadband access, and Southeast Asians were 2 times as likely to not have internet at home compared to East Asians. Lower English proficiency is linked to a greater probability of no internet at home, and telehealth use drastically increased with age. So we decided to highlight these facts and discoveries today because they sort of elaborate on the fact that disaggregated data is really important when conducting surveys that are as diverse as the ANHPI community. So, in conclusion, data disaggregation is extremely important when it comes to collecting data from diverse communities such as the ANHPI respondents of the survey. And different communities have different needs, and these needs cannot be addressed if data disaggregation is not more prevalent. And also another fact to bring up is that access to the internet and access to broadband is very important because a lot of communities, such as the NHPI community, use the internet and broadband to access different needs, which is sort of important in the fact that so many people rely on these for valuable services. And in addition to finishing this survey this past year, we're also a grant recipient of the ACP grant from the FCC. So we just want to emphasize that the ACP funding is potentially going to run out in April of 2024. That means that a lot of members of the NHPI community will not be able to access internet, and such they won't be able to access important services such as education, telehealth, and professional development. But thank you again for listening in on our digital access survey report results, which was again prepared by Yan Zhang, our Broadband Access and Digital Equity Fellow from 2022 and 2023. If you have any comments or questions about the survey results, you can find my email address on our website. And thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric and Nubia, for presenting on the lightning rounds. Next up, we're going to be focusing on digital equity plans, and we're going to start it off with another trivia question. So awesome. The next question. There we go. All right. So answer in the chat or to yourself. Kentucky residents pay an average of how much per month for their internet service? Is it 39, 72, 54, or 63? And we are going to share that answer after our next speaker. So please welcome Ashley Smith. She is the organizer and digital navigator for the SOAR, which is Shaping Appalachian Region. And she's going to be talking about the digital equity plan for Eastern Kentucky.
Hello, great to be here. I'm going to go ahead and get my slides up as I introduce myself. Like Pamela said, my name is Ashley Smith, and I am coming to you from Pikeville, Kentucky. And you might hear Appalachia, but we say Appalachia here. So I'll get my slides up so you can see our beautiful state, because those are those are my background. Just a moment. It's not wanting to share. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So, a little bit about myself. I started with SOAR in August, and SOAR was created by Congressman Hal Rogers. It's been growing well over 10 years, and it covers 54 counties across Eastern Kentucky. Our main focuses are in many areas like innovation with businesses, building healthy communities, and digital equity. And I have linked on this slide here our blueprint for overall for Appalachia, so that you can see that if you're interested. So we developed the digital equity plan this year, and it was really important for us to make it more than just a theoretical document. This plan puts emphasis on the reasons to justify the urgent need for digital equity in Eastern Kentucky. It seems that in recent years, there's been a lot of great increase of funding and plans, but we needed something unique to our region and to rural areas. It was developed looking at organizations and agencies to make the maximum impact on communities that they serve. With this plan, people can advocate for digital equity plans with like lawmakers and policy writers, grantors, and stakeholders. So it's not just for us, it's for other people to utilize in our own region and other regions that it would apply to. We worked with the state of Kentucky, partners like Kentucky Wired. We conducted research using the census and the digital divide index with Purdue. We really wanted to have a wide range of research from local agencies as well as wide indexes so we can make the data as impactful as possible. And with that, we also wanted to connect with people personally in communities and hear the voices and to make it unique. Digital equity is something that we all need, but it needs to be tailored to us. The research also identified 4 main barriers to bridge the digital divide that are now pillars in this plan. So we wanted to focus on getting, firstly, high-speed internet access of at least 100 megabytes a second, which is important to note because you might have a connection, but it may not be a quality connection. The next barrier is affordability. This barrier is very important because we have high poverty rates in areas, and we actually know that there are some organizations advocating to internet service providers to provide plans that cover the entire cost of the Affordable Connectivity Program. So their bill would be $30 and then would be $0 if they were accepted onto the ACP program, which is a really great opportunity for families. Device affordability is also another barrier and a part of the digital equity plan that we developed. Looking at specific areas like Owsley County, over 35% of the households do not have a device that can access the internet, and their poverty rate is also almost 40%. And the census data overall shows us that over 33,000 households lack a computer in Appalachia, Kentucky. And the final barrier that we identified is digital skills. This highlights the struggle to understand and utilize tools from telehealth to job training. If you install the Vital Connection, we have to educate people how it can impact their lives and use it. And we also want to see a workforce boom as well so that people are utilizing remote work. With working with communities, we have achieved grant funding. We have learned even more specific barriers that they are facing. Working with those ISP providers to offer funding to build the connection doesn't mean they'll always want to come to the table. Low density of housing and the terrain can easily cause ISPs to not want to participate. It even goes beyond having the funding. You have lack of access to professionals like engineers and crews to install fiber. When speaking with one of these organizations, trying to connect a very rural area, they said the lack of internet was very isolating. That was a direct quote I got from them. And that you can do all the research, but you also have to look at the reality and numbers and try to connect as many people as you can. In result, communities can travel to community centers or libraries if they had that quality connection, if that was an option, but it shouldn't be the only option or the long-term solution. And this is also in our plan, and it is a direct highlight of distressed counties that we're trying to make a direct impact on. And it shows you as well the average poverty rate and how many have the subscriptions and things like that, so that you can see really how much of Appalachia this impacts. This is a direct page as well. And it shows you that our vision is to lift our region out of economically disadvantaged circumstances in Eastern Kentucky. It tells you that our mission is to have this completed by 2032. And we really want to focus on those 2 goals that we have set. It's ambitious, but we hope that this is a tool to help many organizations develop a plan for the digital divide. We also highlighted the need for fiber on this page, and I'm sure a lot of you know that this can be the best possible long-term investment of available funds. There are obviously areas where fiber may not be possible, and in several rural areas of Eastern Kentucky, we are also looking into options such as satellite and strong wireless connections, and our hard work and passion have really led to many grant opportunities and gained us the opportunity to help digital equity plans for the entire state of Kentucky. So once we developed our office and we were able to create this plan, we got the seat at the table with the state and are helping them actively develop their plan, and hopefully we continue to be a part of that and helping other organizations build their digital equity plan. And this is my contact information if anybody's interested. And I really appreciate your time. It has a link to our ebook that I talked about, that it's our digital equity plan, and then my information and our SOAR office page.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. We do have a question. What resource and tools are available for local cities and counties that they can use to apply for funding?
So on our plan, it has a roadmap of what we used, so that you can really focus on poverty rates and people who don't have digital devices. That can really help you develop your plan, and it can structure it like we have the 4 main pillars, so that you can make it unique to your own area, because Eastern Kentucky is very rural. Our data was very specific to us, but it can be used throughout Appalachia very easily. But it does really outline a lot of great tools for you to find.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. Yeah, the plan is very helpful and very customizable for, the community's needs. Chris, did you have something to say?
Always. And I just want to say I met Ashley and some of the other folks from Shaping Our Appalachian Region and back in September, and it was inspiring. I think y'all are doing really good work. And I think it's really important that we have people like Ashley and SOAR stepping up, because there is a misperception out there that the federal government and the money will solve all of our problems. And I am excited that Eastern Kentucky will have SOAR once that money is spent, and they still have challenges to meet. And so this local organizing is really key. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And another highlight of this year is the hard work that coalitions like SOAR is doing, especially when it comes to state digital equity plans. We saw coalitions like SOAR, Portland's Digital Inclusion Network, and San Antonio Digital Connect define their role as representatives of voices on the ground in state digital equity plans. And to go back to the trivia question, I saw that there's a lot of folks who kind of guessed it. There is all over the place, but the answer is B, $72.94.
Too much.
Too much. The source was from the Education and Labor Cabinet, Residential Technology, which you could also find in the Kentucky Digital Equity Plan.
And we don't have that information in too many places, too. I mean, we need better data to prove what we know, which is a weird thing to say, but it would be great if we had more sources of data that could irrefutably demonstrate that we are paying too much for too little. Speaking of that, I think that's really relevant to what we're coming to next. So, is that me now? Sorry, yes, I'm going to introduce Patrick, but I've lost track because I was actually trying to focus on the presentations. And so we are coming now to a question, which is, at the beginning of the pandemic, 12% of low-income students in Oakland had access to a computer. This is our last trivia question. At the end of 2021, this percentage of low-income students had access to a computer. And so you can see how optimistic you're feeling or pessimistic. And after we talk about digital discrimination here a bit, we will share the answer with you. But now we are going to roll into a discussion with Patrick Messick, who is the director of Oakland Undivided, which has a little # pound in front of it because it's very cool. And we have Sian Tesfaye with the Senior Research and Policy Manager at NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. And we are going to launch into a brief discussion of digital discrimination, which is why you all tuned in. Pamela.
Yes. So to have everybody kind of get a primer and level set, could you please explain, Sian, what digital discrimination is?
Yes, but super quick, I'll take everybody back to a little over 2 years ago, just to give some context of kind of what's inspiring our conversation about this today. Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and there was a lot of really great monetary investment in broadband, but one really important provision in the Infrastructure Act was Congress's directive to the FCC to develop rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. And so over the past 2 years, there's been a lot of public conversations with the FCC, and the FCC has just recently adopted rules just last month to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. And so there's a way that the FCC has defined digital discrimination, and it's really policies and practices that differentially impact consumers' access to broadband. So policies and practices that aren't justified by what the FCC calls genuine issues of economic and technical feasibility. So basic thing that you should take away from this is that the FCC has decided to evaluate certain provider policies and practices that have an impact, right? That have a disparate impact on certain communities based on, race, color, national origin, religion, income, and is going to be evaluating how these policies are impacting those communities, as well as looking at intent. But intent is not going to be the sole factor that the FCC is going to use in evaluating where discrimination is taking place, which is a huge triumph of these rules. Okay, so great. We have some framework in here to try to understand what digital discrimination is. FCC is going to be looking at technical aspects of broadband service as well as non-technical aspects. And Patrick and I will get into some examples in just a bit. But, part of NDIA's origin story really is identifying digital redlining in Cleveland, for example. So really seeing that there were some communities, unsurprisingly, correlated with their income bracket that are basically being denied higher quality services, really based on where they live and how much money they make. So our great hope is that these rules will go a long way in preventing practices like that.
Thank you, Sian. And I think it's worth noting that it was not preordained that we would have the result of the FCC looking at outcome rather than intent. And so it is the work of people like you and others that have made sure that I think the FCC cast a wider net. Now, I'm curious on the ground, Patrick, if you can share with us how communities can use this new rule to shine a light and to correct what's happening in communities.
Yeah, so obviously digital discrimination is going to look different across the country in different communities. In Oakland, it looks like 37,000 disconnected households, families, neighbors, and futures that are deprived of access to this 21st century utility and civil right. And like so many structural inequalities, it is not evenly distributed throughout Oakland. It follows very similar contours to red line maps of East Oakland, Fruitvale, and West Oakland. And really importantly, we're not just talking about a divestment in Black and Brown communities, but a transfer of wealth from investments that could have been made in these Black and Brown communities for decades, but instead have for decades been made in wealthier, predominantly white communities. You could reasonably assume that in these lower income communities with this outdated infrastructure, they would at least be paying lower prices. But we know from the incredible work of the Markup, investigative journalists, and many digital equity advocates on this call that in low income communities, folks are oftentimes paying the most. And we see it in the story of Miss Brandy, who I visit regularly, who lives in public housing, and shared with me that she pays more for internet than she does for rent. Because she needs to keep her two kids connected to keep them as straight A students and to get healthcare and telehealth appointments because she was recently diagnosed with cancer. We see it in the story of Miss Patricia, who jokes with me that it would be faster for her to walk to Safeway and come back home in her walker than it would be to order online groceries because her internet speeds are so unreliable and inconsistent. I think, Chris, you really named the key achievement of this, of the NDIA's advocacy and of the FCC's ruling, which is a really important distinction, which will allow us to change the conversation from what's wrong with this disconnected community to what's wrong with a system that deprives up to 30% of households in any given community from having internet access. And it's specifically around not requiring the proving of some sort of malicious intent. Digital equity advocates, I think, are oftentimes caricaturized as, believing that there's backroom machinations from ISPs who are just plotting against Black and Brown communities, but that's not our contention. Our contention is that they are operating out of fiduciary responsibility to shareholders and not to the people who deserve connections to this basic utility. And I think what they've done here is give license to states, municipalities to develop policies that look at not just malicious intent, but disparate impact. And this is a burden of proof that is feasible for us to show, and many communities are already showing it. And I also hope, we can't just settle on bad actors. We can't just say this is all up to ISPs, because the truth is, especially here in California, we're seeing that the state is equally responsible for a lot of this disparate impact. I'll get into this a little bit more in my keynote, but I think that this is a really expansive ruling, and this framework should empower us all to name the disparate impact which we have a generational opportunity to address.
Thank you, Patrick. And those stories, it really just hits home and helps us really feel the issue. Last question: how can this rule have significant impact in the future?
Sian, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I can start. I'll just say, one of the things that we did find really encouraging about the rules is just the avenues for recourse available to communities. So there's an opportunity for organizations to file complaints on behalf of impacted communities, which is great because, as individuals don't always know that what they're experiencing is digital discrimination. They just know that their internet isn't really great and it's really expensive, maybe. And absent larger community conversations, they just might not understand to the degree that it's impacting, their community. So organizations are going to be able to file complaints on behalf of communities and sort of get this on the record and get this in public view. And I think that a growing trend, a growing groundswell of that kind of community discussion and getting these practices on the record is hopefully going to deter behavior in the future. But where it doesn't deter behavior, allow the FCC to exercise its enforcement authorities.
I think the enforcement is going to be crucial. We've seen that reactive regulation and policies that bring attention to the egregious miscarriages of justice certainly play an important role in any type of pursuit of civil rights. Importantly, though, I think states and municipalities are really going to have to step up to implement proactive policies that prevent this from happening in the future. The FCC was pretty clear that this ruling does not apply retroactively. So for the decades of disparate investment that have got us to this point, that won't be addressed. If it continues, the FCC can step up and draw attention to some of these more egregious practices. But I think it's important to name that the reason we got to this point is because of the softening and of any semblance of regulation that prevented this disparate impact in the first place. Incredibly low standards for broadband speeds set by the FCC, franchise agreements that are pretty much a rubber stamp that gives internet companies carte blanche to invest and choose winners and losers within the same franchise area. So much of the work now is now that the FCC set this framework, it's our responsibility to make sure that we have common sense regulations in place that ensure that the FCC isn't buried in complaints, but rather addressing the most egregious examples while we ensure that every dollar that's invested moving forward doesn't deepen the digital divide, but begins to remediate decades that our communities have endured.
Now, as we transition to our keynote, I do want to thank Sian. Thank you so much for joining us. Patrick will be talking a bit more in a second about Oakland. I did want to wrap up that with just something that I'll be very clear is my opinion, not necessarily that of my colleagues or NDIA or others. And that is that I do think that this work of making sure that everyone's connected should be understood to be one of responsibility of communities, of state and federal government helping out. I sometimes chafe at the idea that we should ask Comcast and AT&T to solve this by themselves or just with government help. We don't ask McDonald's to end child malnutrition. McDonald's and other companies are good at moving food around. Comcast and AT&T are good at moving bits around. These challenges go beyond them. And I think that for all of you who are doing this work, I think we'll find that we need broader resources to address these matters of poverty. And so I don't think this should be something where we're pointing too many fingers at private companies. I think they have a role, but I think that we need to ask a lot of other entities to do more to resolve these issues. And so I'm excited about the digital discrimination work that's being done. But I'll reiterate what we said earlier, which is we need that local organizing. We need you all to carry strong in 2024 and keep doing this work. With that, I do want to transition to learn a little bit more about how Patrick is organizing in Oakland. So tell us more about what the great folks are doing there. Thank you.
All right, let me tee this up real quick.
Yeah, and I should say that, we just shared a link in the chat, but that a story Sean had written, our colleague Sean, is from Oakland, loves Oakland, big fan of the Warriors. So, there's some connection to ILSR here.
Oakland rolls deep. So again, thank you for this incredible opportunity today to speak in front of such a diverse and influential audience. My name is Patrick Messick. I'm the director of Oakland Undivided, an equity-based collective impact initiative that formed in response to the pandemic and the abrupt transition to remote learning. Our goal and what we strive to do is ensure that all public school students have access to the basic tools of a 21st century education, namely a computer, reliable internet connection, and ongoing tech support. And this is really our bread and butter, and it's what's in our DNA. But in 2021, we recognize that for our students to be truly served, they must live in communities that are served. And so we expanded our focus to include the 37,000 disconnected households, again, concentrated primarily in 3 neighborhoods of West Oakland, Fruitvale, and Deep East Oakland. Could you go to the next slide, please? Or am I going to the next slide? Oh, I am. So the greatest strength of Oakland Undivided is the diversity of our coalition. We bring together the city of Oakland, trusted anchor institutions like Oakland Unified School District, Oakland Public Libraries, Oakland Housing Authority, community-based orgs that have been doing this work long before OU ever existed, like Tech Exchange, elected officials, and most importantly, community members in the pursuit of bridging the digital divide for good. We recognize that while digital equity is essential to virtually everyone listed on this slide, it's rarely an organization or individual's primary focus. And that's where we see the real value of coalition building. We create opportunities for institutions, organizations, and individuals to engage to the extent that they have the capacity to within this critical moment for digital equity. I think we have a lot of educators in the house, so huge shout out to all the educators, maybe in the chat, shout out where you've been a teacher. But I think that this really steeped me in structural inequalities that has informed the approach I take to leadership in Oakland Undivided and the approach of our overall initiative. I worked in Title I schools for almost a decade before joining Oakland Undivided. And if anything has become clear to me, it's that intellect and ingenuity are evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. I've had the honor of working with some of the hardest working, most brilliant students and caring families, but I can't tell you how many are deprived of basic resources, which Chris alluded to earlier, of housing, food security, and certainly home internet. As a teacher in a Title I school, I can tell you that we would rarely assign work, even if it would help our students learn, that required home digital access, because we knew automatically it would create a digital equity issue. And I was teaching in the heart of East Oakland at Life Academy when an announcement came out over the intercom that in 4 hours, we all had to be out of the building. And I remember the frantic rush of all the teachers going up to the copying machine. It broke as we were trying to make copies of all the textbooks that we were using because we knew so many of our students wouldn't be able to join classes online. We had known for a while that the pandemic was an issue. It wrought havoc on our community, but nothing could have prepared us for what was to come. As I said earlier, the digital divide long preceded the pandemic, but the pandemic shined a really bright light on and made it impossible to ignore. In this, there's a few critical maps on this slide. In the top left, we have the results of one of the largest year-over-year home digital equity surveys taken across the country, which we affectionately call the Tech Check. Oakland Unified School District integrated a home digital needs assessment into their back to school registration. And from that, we get data on over 34,000 households within Oakland every year. And here you can see in the heat map that East Oakland and West Oakland continue to have dense pockets of disconnected residents, which was also shown in another excellent data source that I hope you all have dug into, the American Community Survey, which shows that some of our communities, 30% or more, lack internet access. And the Greenlining Institute, a really powerful public advocacy organization here in Oakland, did a powerful study that closely showed how the contours of our digital divide so closely replicate redlining maps from the 1930s. And that's not an accident. The issue of the digital divide is certainly complex. As some of our speakers earlier alluded to, there are many components. Digital literacy, understanding the value and knowing how to use a device is crucial. Access to a computer, also essential. However, in so many of our interactions with the community, and we're a little short on time, so I won't be able to show this video, but in our conversations with community, we have learned that the barrier of internet access is probably the #1 impediment to so many in our community accessing high-speed connectivity. And we think this is a crisis. In urban areas, around 3/4 of all those who are disconnected, this is where they live. And you can kind of see that in this 3-dimensional map where cities have an overwhelming amount of population. And so if we're looking at areas where there's 30% disconnected, you can only imagine the depths of this crisis in urban areas, which are all too often overlooked. We cannot talk about internet access without talking about infrastructure. This is where the community has to start. In that trivia question, you learned that Oakland Undivided made a Herculean effort. We distributed in our first year 25,000 Chromebooks and over 10,000 hotspots. But as a teacher, I can tell you that the access given by those hotspots was not always the most consistent and reliable. I thought it was a digital literacy issue. We need to show families how to use these hotspots. I made tutorial videos and helped families set them up, but I was still seeing persistent issues. And with Oakland Undivided and our diverse coalition, we were hearing from community-based orgs, specifically street level health, that these hotspots would go out sometimes when a BART train passed. And so I remember taking one of these hotspots, getting in my car and driving into East Oakland. And the minute I passed 35th Avenue, which is where my school was located, and moved east, it was like I had crossed some invisible boundary where suddenly the hotspot, became incredibly ineffective. And it didn't seem like an accident because it was like crossing this invisible line. With the work with Oakland Undivided, we've deepened this work. With a partnership with Oakland Housing Authority, we started getting into cabling closets in public housing, and we see this rat's nest of copper cabling from the 1980s. In speaking with residents, this picture here is of Miss Brandy, who's been one of our greatest champions. We did in-depth interviews and surveys, and time and again, we found that the quality and reliability of the service was inconsistent in areas that had been and are still historically marginalized. This is the result of divestment that is well proven and well established. The innovative work from our friends over in Cleveland and even from California's regulatory agency, the CPUC, has found systematic divestment in lower income communities. And again, not trying to find a big bad villain here. They're making decisions based on their bottom line and short-term returns. So it results in antiquated infrastructure. But where we really see this impacting residents like Ms. Brandy is because her internet's so slow, she's calling up this internet company and saying, hey, I need a faster speed. I gotta figure something out. And she's getting upsold to the point where now she's now paying well over $100 for what's supposed to be gig speed internet, but you run a speed test and she's getting 5%, 10% of what she's supposed to be getting. And when I said, Brandy, like, why don't you just go to a different provider? I'm seeing these promotional offers. And she said, Patrick, there is no other offer. There's only one provider in this building. And if I wanted to go to satellite, they'd run a credit check. And my credit's not good because of all the surprise billing that this internet company's hit me with, which left me with some unpaid bills, which now makes it possible for me to even get satellite. I tried to get a hotspot, but the hotspot company said they don't even offer service in this community. So we see a deeply structural issue that our coalition is really working to address. As I alluded to earlier, this is a once in a generation moment, and our coalition is incredibly motivated to ensure that we can address this structural issue that starts with infrastructure and then is inextricably tied to affordability by leveraging this generational investment in broadband infrastructure. Like many of you who have looked at the FCC service map, you were shocked to see that in many of our most disconnected communities, there is no indication on these maps that there's any issue at all. And yes, I recognize that there is a difference between disconnected and unserved, but there certainly needs to be a correlation. And when we looked at how the state looks at Deep East Oakland, we did not see a single cluster of more than 3 unserved locations next to one another. But this stood in direct contradiction to the data that we've been collecting, again, through a partnership with our school district, running remote speed tests, an incredible process that was innovated by our friends out in Fresno to assess internet quality throughout our community. We identified thousands of additional unserved locations. But, you know, we're all in the same boat. They're not showing where our need truly is. But then something crazy is happening in California, and I'm guessing it's happening in your state too. And I strongly recommend you look closely at your state broadband map. Here in California, when we looked at our state broadband map, we saw that the state had added almost 10 times as many unserved locations in the highest income communities than they did in the lowest income communities. This is an example where on the left, this is FCC data showing that this really wealthy neighborhood is served, but on the state broadband maps, there's an indication of a tremendous amount of need. And here's where the power of our coalition really matters. This mapping discrimination led to massive divestments in Oakland. And with our diverse coalition, we've really mobilized across the state of California to put incredible pressure on the government to ensure that this once in a generation moment goes to the folks who need it most. And I would really caution everyone to dig deep into your state broadband maps to make sure something similar isn't happening with you as well. So, talked a lot about the problem, but I don't want to leave you with a lot of pessimism because this is a real opportunity for hope. As I said earlier, the greatest strength of Oakland Undivided comes from our coalition. And I want to name a few specific ways that we encourage you to replicate some of these structures. The first is with data collection and sharing. Like all structural inequalities, this is a problem at a massive scale. And if you're relying on sending out a link to a few people to take a survey or running spot speed tests, you're simply not going to collect the data at scale that you need. Working with Oakland Unified School District, not only are we able to run remote internet speed quality tests on thousands of deployed computers, integrate a home digital needs assessment into the back to school registration process every year, but we're also able to do outbound phone banking. So often folks set up these ACP hubs and they just wait for calls to come in and they don't come in. Well, when you have great partnerships with organizations that have access to this data, you can set up data sharing and outreach to families. And one thing we've learned since the pandemic, it's about going to the community, not waiting for them to come to you. And when you bring together these trusted anchor institutions, there's no better way to reach the community that you're trying to serve. Through Oakland Housing Authority, we were able to look into those cabling closets and see that antiquated wiring. We were able to develop those in-depth relationships with people like Ms. Brandy. And with our CBOs, we're able to hear the reality on the ground. Advocacy and collective action. Public-private partnerships are going to be essential. And I don't want to leave with the impression that Comcast, AT&T, all the incumbent providers, they provide internet to more people than any CBO, community-based group, and they are essential to moving forward, especially where there's convergence. And because they don't always have the interests of people, but rather shareholders in mind, it is incredibly important to create that counterbalance where when they're making decisions that create disparate impact, which the FCC has named as discrimination, there's someone there to call it out and to advocate on behalf of the community. And with a diverse coalition, you can do that. And finally, leveraging funding. This is an expensive problem to serve, but one of the silver linings from the pandemic is that there is a historic amount of funding, but alone, you are unlikely to fully leverage all this funding. I want to point out just a few ways that having a coalition allows you to bring in a lot of money to your community. The first is through programs, COVID-era programs and programs thereafter, like the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which allowed us to purchase now close to 40,000 computers, 15,000 hotspots, and infuse those into our school system. Chair Rosenworcel of the FCC just released a proposal called Learning Without Limits that now E-rate, another program that applies to schools and libraries, might discount ongoing service on these hotspots up to 90 or 95% based on how high the free and reduced percentage is at your school. So again, without working with the schools and libraries, we wouldn't be able to bring in those tens of millions of dollars, but with them as part of our coalition, we're able to really bring the dollars in. One other example, or maybe two other examples briefly, working with Oakland Housing Authority, they were able to leverage some of their funding that's designed to foster economic mobility towards the deployment of free Wi-Fi. They just announced that they're deploying free Wi-Fi at the 4 largest public housing communities in Oakland. That's over 1,000 families that are going to get free high-speed internet for at least the next 5 years, with plans to expand beyond that. And then finally is when you bring in city, you can start looking at some of our policies. We had seen that we hadn't updated our affordable housing NOFA for how telecommunications infrastructure is built in all this new housing that's going to be built in over 15 years. And you can imagine regulation around telecommunications wiring written 15 years ago is no longer applicable, but working in partnership with the city, we're updating that policy so that the tens of millions of dollars that are put into new affordable housing over the next decade will ensure that there is fiber to each unit and the provision of free Wi-Fi wherever possible. So if I can leave you with just one piece of guidance, it is build a coalition. Everyone cares about digital equity, but very few folks have the capacity to make it their whole world. Make it your whole world and show these institutions the ways big and small that they can leverage this generational moment in funding, the incredible trust that they built with the community to make significant inroads in ways that we never have before to address digital discrimination, so that hopefully 20, 30 years from now, we can look back at this moment as a real turning point in bridging the digital divide. I'm super grateful for this opportunity to speak with y'all today, and I hope we can continue this work together.
Thank you, Patrick. We're going to ask you a quick question. We're going to wrap up the trivia, and then we're going to wrap up the show. So we're speeding into the final part of it here. But this is a really good question, and I look forward to your answer. I'll paraphrase it briefly by asking you, as you noted, Comcast and AT&T have connected a lot of folks. I think Internet Essentials is better than all the rest of the big companies combined in terms of the impact it's had. At the same time, these companies use their political power to oppose some of the things we think are necessary, in Sacramento or in Washington, D.C. And so how do you go about partnering with someone who is very much allied in some ways, but very much opposed to what you want to see in other ways?
Oof, it's an important question. And I think I just rely on finding areas of convergent interests, right? Comcast has a vested interest in a lot of folks signing up for ACP. Oakland Undivided has a vested interest in making sure a lot of folks sign up for ACP. That's a real area where we can work together, where we host ACP enrollment events, where we bring out Comcast and all the other providers from our community to facilitate really quick enrollment. We think that a lot of people at Comcast want to do the right thing. At the end of the day, I think we all go home and we want to feel good about the work that we do. And we continue to point out for them ways that they can offer better service, pointing out when consumers are getting frustrated that they're getting upsold, pointing out to them the data that we have around their underperforming service so that they can make the necessary network infrastructure upgrades, and being very real about our differences. Oftentimes we at state and local hearings are placed on opposite sides of the bench. We try to do our best to uplift the community voice in hopes that better nature prevails and that we can find compromise wherever possible and really advocate for our community where it's necessary. But it is important to name that there are areas of convergence, because at the end of the day, they benefit from getting more people online, and that's our whole goal. But also while staying really clear-eyed about the differences in our motivations.
Thank you, Patrick. Really want to thank you for the work that you do in Oakland. Thank you for coming on, and we look forward to highlighting you again in the future.
Without a doubt. Just one last thing. So I alluded to the hotspots that we gave out not being the best hotspots. We presented data, that map that we showed, to the ISP that provides our hotspots. And in seeing that data, they now provide our residents, our students, with 5G hotspots, which are about 10 to 20 times faster. So now we can feel a lot better about the trivia answer, because we know that when we give a family a hotspot, we are giving them a secure internet connection, but that only happened because of the power of the coalition.
Wonderful. Stick around and we'll do that trivia answer real quick. That is An answer that nobody put in the chat, I don't think. It was 97%. So at the end of 2021, we went from 12% low 2 years earlier, over a period of 2 years almost. We went from 12% having access to a computer, internet connection, and tech support to 97%. So that's wonderful. And we did not see that in most places. Like that is a real champion. That's a real support, real result of local work there, because there's a lot of places where that number didn't move that much. Now we are going to wrap up. Pamela, I think you're going to start putting the bow around it.
Yes, thank you again, Patrick. This is just highlighting the importance and the crucial role that coalitions have in digital equity work. Really great stuff. All right, y'all. This wraps up our event. Thank you so much for joining us. This was really fun. It was great to wrap up this year with all of the highlights and milestones that we've accomplished as a community together. I want to invite you all to join the NDIA community. We have affiliates of 1,500 affiliates that are doing the same work as you. So if you go ahead and join us, you can get subscription to our newsletter, our thriving listserv, and also access to our community calls. The link is going to be posted up there with way to join. And then I believe Chris also has something to say.
Yes, and I think we might want to redo that post in the comments with the survey, because I think the link wasn't quite clickable. But I wanted to say that, as I said, I wanted to end on a high note. And I think it is difficult right now to look at the ACP likely not being renewed. I think a lot of us have deep concerns about where our national political conversation is and whatnot. And I've listened to a lot of news. In fact, according to my podcast player, I listen to probably too much news. And one of the things I'll say is that history happens locally and globally. And I think many of us are upset about the times that we're in, but there is a global movement, I think, of people being less trusting and governments being perhaps less responsive to many of the values that some of us hold. That is happening globally. We are doing well here. We are making good progress. And there is a lot that we should all be proud of for the work that the kind of people who are attending this, the people who are working with NDIA, with the states, with the federal government to resolve these issues. I think when we look back at history, we sometimes feel like that was a hard time or that was a better time. And during the better times, people were freaked out. And during the hard times, people danced and had fun. And so at any given time, there is a reason to despair and there is a reason to hope, and we can choose where we put our energies. And so, I think you can see from this show and the work that we all do, we put it in hope. And so, there's winning doesn't look like everything comes out great all the time. Sometimes it looks like there's still a lot of mountains to climb. So I am excited for where we are right now. I'm excited to do better in 2024. I hope that you all have a real chance to have a sense of peace and have a great holiday season. I recommend starting with the Connect This show. You could binge it if you haven't watched it a whole lot before. Connect This. It's fun. And we try to keep it light. We are doing a show tomorrow. So I'm just going to note that for people that would like to get some year-end thoughts from the perspective of people deep in the industry. I am very excited for net inclusion. I have registered half of my team. We're figuring out who else is able to go there, but we look forward to seeing you there. I'm really thankful for all of the people at ILSR who have made this show possible, and NDIA. It's been wonderful producing 4 episodes with you this year, and God willing, we'll keep doing it in next year. So we appreciate your feedback on these events now and in the future. Thank you for your attention, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Keep up the good work.